audio, main camera, side camera, top camera, face camera, and screen capture. This is composing music. Right, so that last track, it sounded pretty big, quite happy with it, but still the strings and the power, I have a formula. I always go strings and French horns, I always go for that melody line, so I'm going to change it up today. I'm going to focus on drums, I'm going to focus on percussion, I'm going to build something that's just action, moving forwards, pacey, but really all within the rhythm section, less to do with melody. Let's get to it. Okay, so that's coming along, that's really starting to work. I started off with the percussion, of course, that was the main aim, and because of that, I've ended up with something that continuously moves along but doesn't get too over the top, which works really well for stuff like cinematic shots going over the top, or even, to be honest, even an action sequence would be fine. So long as there's some other movement going on, it'll work. It'll blend into the background and hopefully enhance it rather than get in the way and distract the listener. I quite like the sound of it. It's quite full, and yet it isn't overpowering. And I think most of my other tracks have got to a point where they've definitely been overpowering. So with this one, aiming for a lack of melody, but just an interesting everything else. Interesting rhythm, interesting dynamic range, possibly structure and all this sort of thing. So I started off with a few different sample libraries. I've got Damage Armageddon going. I've got Action Strikes, which are quite nice. Haven't used them in a while, actually. Then here, oh no, it's still Action Strikes. A bit of timpani. That's from here. Oh! I see. That's why the timpani sounded slightly odd. I thought I was using the Percussion Symphony series stuff. Whoops. Okay, well it works, so I'm not going to change it. If it's not broken, don't fix it, all that sort of thing. I then introduced the tuba after I'd got all those counter rhythms going on. Of course, the rhythms originally began syncopated. I then filled in the gaps with the on-beats for more bassier things. Higher attack instruments covered the bars quite evenly using quavers. And then I had a few other drums sort of working alongside the other ones, but in a mirrored way. Let me see if I can find something that gives you an example of that. Okay, so I've got this. Okay, now I've got this working alongside it. So the fast bit is on one, then fast bit's on the other. Fast bit on one, fast bit on the other. And it just sort of works to fill in the space, but also add interest because the tonality is changing quite dramatically when you go between them. So after I put the tuba in, I use the modulation wheel to give it a bit of emotion. I've been a bit lazy with that, especially when I do two-handed stuff. I need to give it a bit more expression, so that's where the modulation wheel came in to increase and reduce the dynamics when it needed to flow between those chords. So the spiccato strings came up next with the cello going first. Nothing particularly interesting, but it followed along with the chord progression that was going on. It was using intervals of those chords, maybe the one from the first chord, the fifth from the next chord, because I think it was A flat minor to E major, and then here coming down, I just followed the scale going down to change it up a bit. It needed to develop. Then we added some bass. Again, not much to it, but together it makes more sense because the accents that I've been playing on the cello, I then brought out further with the bass. It gives it that drive, that pushing forwards, because the cello on its own doesn't work too well, it's a bit bland. Same with the bass, it sounds a bit empty. Example shown there. Violas. That really added to it. I was quite happy with that. It's just moving backwards and forwards from an A flat to a C sharp, A flat to a B flat, and to a B. I mean, it's just going up and down the scale, but always returning back to the A flat. And then it changes up again. So it's still going up and down the scale, but the pattern's changed, it's developed. And then the violin was introduced. What's that doing? It's accenting what the viola was trying to accent by itself. Bum, bum, bum. You can see it in the viola. In piano roll, dum, dum, dum. You can see the stronger notes being in red. And the violin accents them. So then you get to this next bit where it's developed further. You've got the viola starting. The violin copies in unison, an octave higher. Then the cello comes in an octave lower, in unison, and it's just building, doesn't reach a peak, but it just continues on that tension. It continues that feeling of something's gonna happen. Drops away, to leave the percussion and the tuba to do its own thing. Maybe something will be layered over the top of this, I don't know. We shall see. Comes back to what we just said about the rising instruments in unison. Well, rising up and then the lower cello coming in. We then have the bridge. The chords change up a little bit. The tuba sounds like I need to adjust the modulation a little bit though. And then once that's gone halfway through, the violins join in, a little bit more legato stuff. Nothing overpowering on the top, it's just an accent, it's just decoration. See? Soft, it's just, it's like a storyline's developed. You want to hear movement, you want to hear change, but you don't want it to distract from whatever visuals this could go against. Probably my own violin videos. And then we come back to what we had originally right at the start. And of course that will need to develop a little bit further because it's actually going to be like a double chorus sort of ending. So to get a 3-minute track in the space of an hour, I'm pretty pleased with. It's working out. It's come along quite well, and it's done exactly what I wanted it to do, which is so rare. Anyways, I don't know when the next episode is at. Might be tomorrow, might be the day after. I need to keep a schedule a little bit more, but it's difficult, it's challenging, it's a new thing. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this, and I shall see you in the next one.